Hello everyone, welcome to English Digest.
Hello, this is Sam.
And I'm Angeline, and you might want to get a box of tissues ready for this episode because our topic might tug on your heartstrings today. We're going to write a letter to someone who has passed on.
好，今天呢又到我们的写作单元了。那一开始呢就要请大家准备好面纸哦。为什么呢？因为呢今天写作的主题呢就是要写一封信给这个对你来说很重要的人，而且这个人呢，已经离开我们喽。
So I've experienced the death of 4 loved ones. Now compared to other people, that might not be a lot. So I think I'm actually quite fortunate. My grandfather passed away a number of years ago.I was devastated. He was the first person to pass away in my life. Now, what made it worse was actually to see my family members in so much pain. The other 3 loved ones that have left my life are actually my dogs. They were like family to me, so the pain was also overwhelming.
好，今天呢，大家就要来回想一下，有没有过这个很重要的人离世的经验了？那这个很重要的人呢，他可以是你的亲人，可以是一个偶像，甚至是你的宠物。那大家呢，可以先开始酝酿一下情绪，回想一下这些经验了。
Okay, so I think of writing a letter to someone who has passed on might actually help the grieving process. So without further ado, let's take a look at our writing prompt for today.
好的，马上看到我们今天这个写作的提示了。他说呢，当我们失去自己生命中重要的人时，生活难免会开始失去重心。不妨试着将思念转化为文字，抒发内心情感。请写一封120字以上的信函给过世的亲朋好友、偶像或是任何一位已经离世的人。那记得呢，我们信末署名请用 Tim 或者是 Jenny。Okay,
so when we lose someone who is close to us, you might inevitably feel like your world is coming to an end. You might begin to lose focus in your life and you feel hopeless. It can be a very difficult time. What we can do is put these feelings and emotions into words. Today, our writing exercise asks us to write a letter with at least 120 words addressed to a friend, a relative, an idol, or anyone who has passed away. Sign off the letter as Tim or Jenny. Now, this writing exercise might bring about painful memories, especially if you're writing about someone who has had a significant impact on you. For me, I would choose to write a letter to my grandpa, and I would tell him all the things I wish I could have said to him in his final moments of life that I didn't get to say. What about you, Sam? Who would you write about?
If this is an exam, I'll probably have to make up a story. Yeah, I mean, my grandpa left us when I was quite young, and to be honest, we're not very close. Yeah, but I do remember the time when my dad received the call while driving that the hospital informed him about my grandpa had just left, and he pulled out his sunglasses and put it on. It's quite a dramatic moment.
He put on his sunglasses so that you guys wouldn't see the pain or the tears in his eyes?
I have no idea if
you have
it's
no
pain
idea.
or tears, but it's like really dramatic.
I see. So you remember that exact moment.
Yes.
Yeah. Usually when we get news of somebody passing away, you can always remember that, the moments leading up to it, and how your world just suddenly changed, came crashing down. Okay, well, let's take a moment to talk about letter writing first. Letters typically follow one of 3 formats: block, modified block, or semi-block. Now, block format is generally perceived as the most formal format. For semi-formal letters, you can use modified block or semi-block format. It'll be helpful to look up sample letters online to see what these formats look like. Now, regardless of which format you use, letters should always be dated, have a greeting and salutation, not forgetting the recipient's title, i.e. Mr., Miss, Doctor, a closing, best regards, sincerely, and a signature.
好，今天呢我们要写一封信咯。那信件的格式呢有很多种，刚刚 Angeline 老师就有提到这个 block、modified block 或者是呢 semi-block， 这个呢就是所谓的对齐式、改良对齐式跟半对齐式。那呢同学可以搜寻一下就知道呢，这种3种对齐方式它的长相是不一样的。那格式虽然重要呢，但基本上对于内容不会有影响哦。那在今天的文章里面呢，这3种的排版方式都没有问题。那写信很重要的呢，除了这个格式之外呢，一定要有以下几个重点了。首先呢，你一定要有称谓 ，OK， 你是要写信给谁？再来呢，要有日期，信是什么时候写的？那最后呢，当然要有这个结尾语跟署名哦，写一下是谁写的。 那首先呢，称谓的部分呢，我们可以用这个 dear OK 加上名字，亲爱的谁，你要写信给谁。那比方说呢，像是这个 Dear Sam、Dear Angeline 等等。那或者是呢，你可以在这边加上头衔，比方说这个 Doctor 谁、Mr 谁、Miss 谁、先生、小姐、博士等等。那很重要的再来还有时间哦，你要让读者知道呢你是什么时候寄的。日期我们通常呢会放在这个称谓上方空一格的位置，那你要写在这个右上角或是字左对齐都没有问题。那信的结尾呢，最后一定要写一下署名要签名，让读者知道说，这个信是谁寄出来的。那这个署名呢分成2个部分，第一个部分呢要讲一些祝福的话，也就是我们的结尾语咯。常见的呢，像是这个sincerely your friend 或是 love best regards 等等。那呢，当然我们要看这个收件者是谁来决定。比方说，如果你是写信给老板的话，你大概不会说 love， 有一点奇怪。好，那位置呢？我们就写在这个信件结尾呢，我们下方空一行就写结尾语。那呢，这个可以在右下角或是在左边都没有问题。那下面一行呢，最后就要写你的名字了。那今天的文章呢，我们有指定呢，你必须要写 Tim 或是 Jenny， 不要写成别人，写成别人就0分哦。
Yeah, and don't write your own name. You will lose marks if you do that. There are several approaches you might want to take with this letter. You might want to express appreciation or gratitude, or talk about how much you miss him or her. Or it can even be a letter of apology, okay? No matter which type of letter you wish to write, be sure to be sincere and also remember to write in first person.
好的，今天呢，这是一封抒发自己的内心情感的一封信，所以呢，你可以写对这个人物呢，对他的思念，或是呢，你可以表达歉意、表达感谢、表达倾慕等等，都可以没有问题。那另外呢，要提醒大家呢，信件写作是你在跟他对话，所以呢，我们全部呢都是使用第一人称哦。
Okay, so next we're going to take some time to do some brainstorming for our letter. Now we can use an organizational chart to organize our ideas. Take a look at the sample organization chart in our magazine. You'll see that the first 3 boxes in the second line identify the content of a letter. So who, why, what. Who is this letter addressed to? Why are we writing this letter? And what is our letter going to be about?
好的，写作的最开始呢，一定是脑力激荡哦。我们来脑力激荡一下，想一下今天这篇文章我们要写什么样的内容。那今天这一篇呢，我们就一起来用组织图来架构今天这封信写作的内容了。首先呢，我们先把今天的主题写在最上面了。今天的主题就是我们要写信给一个对你来说很重要但是已经离开的人。我们把这个主题写下来。接下来呢，你就可以写下这封信要包含什么样的内容哦。在我们的范例里面呢，它就列了3点哦。首先呢是 who， 你这封信呢是要写给谁？然后再来是 why， 为什么想要写给他？你的理由是什么？那最后呢，我们当然就是 what 就是说你这个文章里面要写一些什么内容，你要对他讲一些什么话。那呢再来呢，我们接下去呢就是来回答呢这3个问题。那这3个问题呢都回答清楚之后呢，我们就可以决定今天信件的内容了。那为什么今天我们要用组织图来架构我们的文章，来做这个脑力激荡呢？组织图的好处呢，就是当你把这些重点列出来之后呢，你呢就能很清楚的掌握到，我们今天呢要写的是哪一些重点，你就可以知道说哪里有太多细节，哪里呢还需要更多细节。所以呢，稍后呢我们在拟定大纲或是甚至在写作的时候呢，就比较不容易歪楼，比较不容易偏题哦，你的文章比较不容易走中，不会遭奸起啦。那再来呢，我们现在有了这个组织图，我们现在已经脑力激荡结束，知道我们要写什么之后呢，我们就要把这些点变成线，所以呢我们就要把这些 idea 这些点子呢写成句子，那呢它就可以成为我们文章的大纲，成为我们文章的这个 outline。
Okay, so earlier I said if I was to write this letter, I would write about my grandpa, okay?
Yeah.
So let me kind of quickly brainstorm what I would write about if I was to write this letter to my grandpa. Now, the recipient of the letter, of course, my grandpa,
Yes.
right? Now, the purpose of my letter, so earlier I talked about the fact that we could express gratitude, appreciation. We can talk about how much we miss him or her, or even a letter of apology. I think I would show my gratitude and show my appreciation. Now, it's a funny story, but I used to see him every 2 years. Sometimes when I was a lot younger, I would see him, the gap would be a lot longer. That's because he lived in Singapore and I was in Vancouver.
Okay.
So I didn't see him as often. But every time when he found out that we were going back to Singapore, let's say my flight arrives at at 8 p.m. at night. He would go to the airport at 12 p.m. noon to wait for us. Yeah, okay, so mainly because I think he had nothing else to do, but also because he was so excited. So he would go super, super, super early, and I don't know how he killed time, but he managed to kill like 8 hours at the airport.
Yeah. Remember, that's waiting. The time when we don't have smartphones.
Exactly. Yeah, and then, okay, so I would probably write about that because that's a memory that I hold very dearly to myself. The fact that he would go to the airport so early. You know, when I was younger, I never understood that. I was just like, why would you waste so much time at the airport? But now that I think about it, it just made me feel so touched because it was like he was really, really excited, really looking forward to it. And I think if I were to write this letter, I would write based on this to show my appreciation that this was something that I took for granted when I was younger. And now as an adult, I understand all those moments that we had together. I would never get them back, unfortunately. So yeah, this is a really good, I honestly think that this is a very good exercise for you to help kind of, remember what it was like when this person was still around and what impact this person had. Okay, so that's the brainstorming. Now let's go and take a look at our outline, okay? Because now it's time to organize all those ideas. So everything I just said earlier, now I got to put them into an outline. Now take a look at what ideas you have written down and see if you can group them into separate paragraphs, okay? Your first paragraph of your letter might discuss the purpose of your letter. Or maybe you'd rather talk about some past fond memories together. Now let's look at the sample outline in the magazine. This letter was addressed to a celebrity, okay? Tim did not know this person personally, and we can tell from the first topic sentence. It says, you seemed like someone who wouldn't behave too formally. Now, the writer gives 3 supporting statements to explain this. A, your TV shows revealed your good sense of humor. B, I loved how excitable you could get over a good meal. C, it shocked my parents when you started cursing.
OK, 好，所以呢，今天我们就看一下范例文章，它的大纲是怎么写的呢？那今天呢，我们的这个作者他是要写一位 celebrity， 一位名人哦，他要针对这个名人来写作，所以呢，他一开始主题句呢就马上讲说 ，You seem like someone who wouldn't behave too formally。OK， 他就讲说，我们今天这个他要写作的这个名人呢。他不像是这个会是很正式或者很拘谨的一个人哦。那呢，他先讲完了这句之后呢，马上就开始解释，有一些不同的这个 supporting details， 一些这个细节、一些点哦，来支撑他的主题句了。他就说呢，他的 TV show， 他的电视节目呢，呈现出来呢，他是有这个很棒的sense of humor， 就是幽默感，他是很有幽默感的一个人。然后呢，他是对于好吃的食物呢，总是非常的喜欢，非常的兴奋。然后呢，怎么样呢 ？It shocked my parents， 让我的父母很惊讶是怎么样 ？When you started cursing， 当你在节目上骂脏话的时候，简直是吓坏了我的父母了。那呢，我们接下来看第二段呢。第一段已经形容完这个 Tim 看他的电视节目的感受形容了我们的这个主角是什么样的人。那第二段呢，应该他就会来讲说呢，对于这个名人的过世的这件事情，他有什么样的心境，有什么样的感受，在第二段就要来呈现出来了。
So in the second paragraph, Tim talks about his reaction to the celebrity's passing. It says, I was crushed when I found out you'd died. Then Tim talks about the impact Anthony Bourdain had on him. It says, your passion for knowledge inspired me to explore the world. I take my friends around our city and go to restaurants that catch my attention. I think about you when I feel nervous about learning more about their dishes.
所以呢，第二句他就讲说，当知道这个名人已经过世的时候呢，他是怎么样 crushed， 就是非常难过、伤心欲绝。那他就讲说，这个安东尼·波登呢，对于他呢是有什么样的影响？他就讲说呢，波登呢对于求知欲，然后他这个到很多地方去旅游这件事情呢，激励了我们的这个作者呢，让他有这个勇气去探索这个世界。那探索这个世界不一定是出去旅行了，他就讲说呢，他就会带他的朋友们在他的城市里面走走啊，去找说有没有这个有趣的餐厅让他想要去吃的。那当他觉得害怕、觉得紧张，要踏入这个陌生的餐厅的时候呢，他就会回想起安东尼·波登就会回想起他去过这么多地方，吃过这么多东西，让他呢有勇气来探索这个世界，来尝更多不同的美食，来了解更多的这个文化。
Tim then concludes the letter expressing his gratitude. He says, I learned a lot from you. Thank you.
所以最后呢，我们记得文章一定还是要给他下一个结论啦。那在这边呢，我们的作者呢，就是表示他的这个谢意谢谢你因为你呢，我这个学习了很多，这样子，他用这样子的方式来下一个结论。
Okay, so we are going to take a quick break before we read through the first sample. so don't go anywhere. Hello, welcome back. We are going to take a look at writing sample 1. Writing sample 1. October 23rd, 2020. Dear Anthony Bourdain, I hope I can call you Tony. You always seemed like the kind of guy who wouldn't stand on ceremony. Your TV shows portrayed you as a man with a good sense of humor and an inquisitive spirit. I also loved how excitable and emotional you could get over a good meal. My mom and dad always freaked out when you started cursing, but it made me laugh so hard. I was crushed when I found out you'd died. But maybe you'd be glad to know that your passion for knowledge inspired me to explore the world through restaurants. Sometimes I take my friends on tours around our city, stopping at restaurants that catch my attention. When I feel nervous about asking to speak to the chefs to learn more about their dishes and techniques, I think about how happy people were to share their expertise with you on your shows because you were such an enthusiastic listener. I pretend that I'm you, and I learned so much. Thank you for that. Your grateful fan, Tim. Okay, so for those of you who don't know, Anthony Bourdain was a celebrity chef who later traveled the globe to explore cities, villages, and countries as a journalist and a food expert. Now, his passing came as a huge surprise as his death was deemed a suicide. So if you haven't heard of Anthony Bourdain, you can actually learn about what he's like from this letter. Tim says, Anthony seemed like the kind of guy who wouldn't stand on ceremony. Now, the phrase to stand on ceremony means to adhere or insist on conforming strictly to formalities or protocol.
Stand on ceremony 这个片语呢，它就有过分拘束或是居于礼节的意思哦，就是呢这个很强调这些该怎么做，每一个细节都要做到这样子。那如果要表示别太拘束呢，我们就可以说 Don't stand on ceremony。比方说呢 The CEO doesn't want his employees to stand on ceremony。这位执行长呢不希望他的员工过分拘束 and ask them to address him by his first name，并且呢要求他们用他的名字来称呼他。那另外在这边我们看到这个看起来比较复杂的单词 inquisitive。inquisitive 这个字呢就表示好奇的、爱钻研的、追根究底的。那呢它就跟它的这个名词很有关系了，因为 inquisition 这个字就表示讯问、审问哦。比方说这个审问嫌疑犯，那一直问，所以呢它的形容词当然是表示这个好奇的。OK，the inquisitive child is always asking her parents questions about things in the world. OK， 这位好奇的孩子呢总是问他的父母世界上所有东西有关系的问题。
Okay, and Anthony Bourdain had a very likable personality because of his authenticity. He was very real. Like Tim said, Anthony would curse on TV. Now, to curse means to use offensive words when you speak. Curse is the same as swear.
curse 这个字呢，可以当作动词呢，也可以当作名词。它呢，就是这个童话故事里面我们还看到的这个诅咒了。比方说我最近这个很衰哦，走在路上都这个鞋底还掉下来 It's like I've been cursed.
Oh no.
我被诅咒了吧，这太衰，有够衰哦，我们就可以这样讲。或者是呢，像这个童话故事里面，你就会讲说 A witch puts a curse on the princess. 这个巫婆呢在这个公主身上下了一个咒，下了一个诅咒。但这边呢我们不是说这个波登呢他会魔法哦，在这边呢这个 curse 我们应该要翻译为咒骂，或者是我们说爆粗口。 OK， 这时候你也可以用 swear， OK， 就是讲脏话这样的意思。
Okay, so it sounds like Anthony Bourdain inspired Tim to become a foodie. A foodie, F-O-O-D-I-E, foodie, is a person who enjoys and cares about food very much. I'm sure there are a number of restaurants in Taiwan that are very popular among foodies.
foodie 这个字呢，现在尤其是当这个一些社群软体特别红之后呢，现在路上如果有石头掉下来，大概打中的都是 foodie 哦，就是 foodie 真是太多了。foodie 就是这种爱好食物的美食家，爱吃货啦。我们中文会说吃货。比方说这个看到什么新餐厅啊，就要去拍个照、打个卡、吃一下，然后评论一下，这样什么有趣新奇的都想吃吃看，我们就会说 foodie。所以像我们今天这个作者 Tim， 或者是呢像是他讲的这位主厨哦，这个安东尼波登呢，他们都是属于 foodie， 就是吃货，对食物很有研究，很喜欢吃饭的人。
Okay, now let us take a look at our second sample. Writing Sample 2, October 23rd, 2020. Dear Danny, it's been years since I last saw you alive. I've gone on to high school and watched the world turn ever onward. But no matter how much has happened, nothing can or ever will erase what I remember of you as my classmate. Nothing can diminish the impact your death had on me and so many others, despite the fact that I barely knew you at all. When our English teacher told us you had died by suicide, I could barely process it. You were just 14. I couldn't comprehend what could possibly make you feel so terrible and valueless that you would resort to ending your own life. Though I didn't know how deep your despair was, I still feel like I and the whole community at our school were accountable for it. Maybe a little more compassion or empathy would have saved your life. I still have a picture of you in my room that I received from our school's grief counselor. I keep it there so that your face and your existence will never be forgotten. You aren't here anymore, but you still have people who grieve for you. I hope you're at peace wherever you are. Love, Jenny. Okay, this is a very, very sad letter. Jenny wrote a letter to her late classmate, Danny. Now, I can't imagine how Jenny and her classmates felt at that time when they learned their fellow classmate committed suicide. That means to kill oneself, okay? Now, many might have felt immense guilt, wondering how come they couldn't see the signs or what they could have done differently.
今天我们第二篇的这个文章呢，作者就是写信给他的同学哦。那他是怎么过世的呢？他说他是 commit suicide。commit suicide 就是自杀哦。I can imagine how I would feel when this happened. It must be shocking and, like you say, feel like immense guilt. Yeah, wishing that you could do something to prevent this from happening.
Exactly. And they were only 14. Now, at the age of 14, I'm not sure if you actually understand what it means to commit suicide, or you might not even be able to understand the whole process or the whole concept completely. And it's only when you get to high school that you realize, okay, oh my goodness, somebody actually committed suicide when they were so young. Jenny begins the letter talking about how much of an impact Danny's death had on her, regardless of how much time had passed. So, Jenny still has a picture of her classmate Danny in her room so that she will always remember her. That sounds like, she really never, ever got over this, and she never forgot about this incident. Despite the fact that she barely knew Danny, she could barely process her death. Now, the word process here means to understand the meaning of something that has happened or been said. Deaths can be very difficult to process. It's hard to imagine what life will be like without this person, especially when they were just with you moments ago.
Process 这个字哦，就表示处理哦。比方说，像是我们这个组装电脑里面 CPU 哦，中央处理器，我们就会说 processor。那或者是像是这个食物处理机哦 ，food processor。所以呢，你想象一下，你就好像这个电脑呢在处理这个资讯。作者呢在这边就用这个动词呢来表示这样的状况哦。这个讯息呢，他难以接受，他的大脑没有办法处理，不知道该怎么样面对，这样子的意思哦。
So I'm not sure if every school in Taiwan has a grief counselor, but basically a counselor is somebody in your school a staff member in your school that you can speak to about your feelings, about any problems that you have struggling with. You could also ask this person for career advice. It depends on the scope of what they're capable of addressing. But a counselor is somebody that you could go and talk to about private matters usually. Now, a grief counselor is one that a school might have if there has been a death in the school.
Okay.
And also maybe even a death of a loved one. Sometimes kids don't know how to process that. They don't know how to deal with it. So a school might have a grief counselor. And if you were to go talk to a grief counselor, they might tell you that there are actually 5 stages of grief and loss. Now, the first stage or the first reaction is denial and isolation. So you deny the reality of the situation. That means you don't believe that it's true. This person never left. This person is still alive. The next stage is anger. So you might feel anger towards medical professionals for not doing enough, or even the deceased for leaving you.
好，所以呢，在这边面对死亡呢，我们就有这个学者提出人类心理会有的5个阶段了。那第一个阶段呢，你会 deny 就是否认哦，你就是会不可能啊，怎么会呢？他刚刚不是还在这边呢？那再来呢，你就会 anger， 你就会愤怒哦，比方说，是不是这个医生没有处理好啊，还是怎么样？你会开始生气等等。
The third stage of grief is bargaining, okay? So it's normal to feel helpless. So you'll try to find ways to regain control over your life. So you start to believe there was something you could have done differently to have helped save your loved one. For example, if only, you might have a lot of these thoughts going through your head. If only we had sought medical attention sooner. If only we had tried to be a better person toward them. If only I could have done this, then this might not have happened.
好，再来呢，下一个阶段呢，你就会这个 bargain 就是讨价还价哦。那讨价还价在这边不是真的是什么价钱上的讨价还价，它是呢，你在这边是想要找回你的掌控权哦。比方说这个拜托不要吗？至少再5分钟可以吗？是不是假如我早一点来，他是不是就怎么样？我什么都愿意做，只要这个我们是不是找另外一个医生，是不是其实就可以怎么样？等等等哦。那这个阶段呢，就是 bargain。
Now, the last 2 stages of grief and loss are depression and finally acceptance. So as I mentioned earlier, writing a letter can help you process your grief, okay? It's a way to sort out your emotions and maybe even bring closure to the incident.
所以在最后2个阶段呢，我们会先经历这个depression， 就是抑郁哦。比方说这个我失去他了，我不想再活了，这样这种很悲伤、很忧郁哦。那跟最后呢 acceptance， 就是你最后接受了，好吧，这个木已成舟，我们应该要来准备后事了，等等等。这个就是面对死亡的5个阶段呢。那在这边呢，如果你有经历这样的状况，那写信哦，把你的这个状况，把你的心里想对他说的话写下来，或许是一个方式呢，来帮助你 process， 来帮助你处理这样子的心境跟这样的情感。
Okay, so at the end of the unit, you'll also notice that we've included an organizational chart. And this is a chart that you guys can use to practice brainstorming. Okay. We had a very heavy topic today to talk about. It definitely wasn't easy reading through these letters, especially the second one, because the child committed suicide. I find that very, very sad. And it's something that our education system all around the world actually needs to pay more attention to. Because child suicide rates are definitely going up. The age of these suicides are actually getting lower too. It's really scary. Yeah, so I think it was a good writing topic, even though it might have made you a bit sad or upset, unfortunately. But it is something that we need to address every now and then. We need to, everything is not just happy all the time, right?
Yes.
Okay, so we've come to the end of our lesson. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is Angeline.
This is Sam.
Goodbye.
Bye.